All aboard! Well, hello, and welcome to this edition of Shaky Hands Chat. And a little warning, I'd go out and get a cup of tea, coffee, or an adult beverage, because this one's going to be a long one. And what we've got, I picked up a wagon load on eBay for £7. I need the railings for that. That one's pretty much entire, but needs a little bit of help. That one's got missing parts. I'm thinking about that one later. That one's a nice little wagon, needs a little help. As does that, needs quite a bit of help, that one. And the Mighty White needs a bit of help, as does the Bird's Eye, because they've no roofs. And I'm going to be doing some resin moulding to get new roofs. LMS brake van, that were good. The McVitie's wagon is good, but its wheels were pressed up. Anyway, we start by giving them all a good rubbered up dub. 3 men in a tub. And give them a good scrubbing over. And rinse off and stuff, just to get any surface oils or dusts off, because they're going to be painted. And there we go, giving the McVitie's van a good scrub, as do the LMS one. And I'm going to be weathering them. They're going to be pretty dirtily weathered, because they're old batterers. I'm just using them to practice and me weathering techniques. I'm by no means an expert at the moment, but I can get them halfway looking decent. All this is basically is a save of a cheap lot, to see if any beginners in the hobby, so they can see cheap lots on eBay. And it'd be good if I could make my mind up where cameras going. And yeah, so any newcomers to the hobby, I'm bending the axles in, because it's been stood on and the axles had been pushed up. Yeah, so any newbies, I'm giving it a bit of a polish now, because it had marks on. Yeah, so any newcomers to the hobby, have the confidence to have a look at eBay. Get old wagon lots and do them up, just so you can see the potential in stuff and bring costs down, because God knows costs are expensive enough nowadays. I mean, these are really old wagons. Imagine what you could do with some of the first gen Chinese wagons. That's one of the first gen Chinese. That's a nice wagon. And that one, I was surprised, that LMS brake van. That one's a REM product. So it's actually quite old, that one. I'm straightening out couplings. It's just doing odd bits and bobs of jobs on them. And saves on them, and here I'm unclipping, well, the roof's off. That's a roof I borrowed off another van, because if you remembered, it didn't have a roof. I'm unclipping the base so I can give it a clean underneath. I don't know why I bothered, to be honest, because it didn't really need it and I only ended up gluing it back on anyway. So God knows why I did that. Some things I do are beyond me, but I did it. I'm sure I had a reason at the time. I'm not sure what it was, but I'm sure it was there. Anyway, I'm putting a metal weight in to give it a bit of extra weight. And here I'm taking paints off that have been put on by a previous owner to weather it. I'm taking it off because really they put far too much on and it had covered writing and stuff. It actually gave it, once it had worn off and it had sunk into the grain of the wood, it actually gave quite a nice finish. But it gets some alternative weathering further down the line. Weathering, really, in this case, it's just a basic weathering, but normally I work on a less is more for weathering. And here I'm adding sand to PVA for a wagon load. I'm presuming that's what was in the Arnold Sands wagon. I'm presuming it carried sand. So I made a sand load out of PVA and sand. There I'm shaping it and moulding it with a brush. Moulding it to the sides of the wagon. And there was a hair mark in the roof, so I'm sanding out the hair mark because I want it for mould. I want the roof for making a mould because the actual roof goes back to another wagon after. And here I'm sanding and roughing up the actual lettering on the side of the wagon. On the Arnold Sands one, you couldn't do it too much because it were going to damage the grain on the wagon. But it was enough to make it look worn, so it was a bit better on the McVitie's wagon. You could do a bit of wear and tear on the McVitie's wagon. Make the logo look a bit aged. And here what I'm doing, I'm putting some white oil paint on. And what I actually do is scrub it in to make the actual area look paler. If there were no decals on, etc., I'd have just sprayed, I'd have put a little bit of white in the actual colour I'd sprayed the van with, and then just airbrush streaks onto it. But this is a quite effective method with a brush. Actually scruffing it in, if you will. And here I made a bit of a mistake doing the white round the top because it got onto the sand. So I ended up airbrushing it later. And to be honest, it didn't make that big a difference on the Arnold Sand wagon. It does make a little bit of a difference that it's paler and more worn looking, but not hugely so. And here I'm doing the bird's eye fish fingers one. As you can see, I've scruffed down the logo on that. If anything, I could have done with a smaller brush, put a bit less on, because oil paint does go quite a long way. but it does got fading effects. But as I've said, I probably did a bit much there. And do it on the lazy bitch and silly clogs van. And there we go. That looks like it's got faded panels now. And there you go. I use back of my hand for taking paints off. It's similar to a dry brushing, and on the mighty white one I covered it with black oil paint because it were white, and scrubbed it off with a towel so it went into the recesses. Gives quite a nice effect. And here I'm squeezing plasticine into my roofs off of the vans, and I'm going to resin mould roofs for the vans. Save searching for them. Also, the bonus is if I get any more vans now, I've got the moulds so I can mould again. I just need to mix some resin up, ditch it in, and here presto, I've got roofs. There we go, I've just squished them onto the bottom of the Tupperware tin. I'm making a barrier so I don't use too much. What I use to make the latex, what I use to make the mould start again is a latex compound. It's available on eBay if you look up for latex mould making, and you just mix the red hardener in with a latex and then squish it into where you want it. Make sure it fills all the gaps, hopefully with no bubbles in vital areas, which I was pretty lucky I didn't get on this one, but I did check underneath before it dried. There you are, having a check underneath, see there were no bubbles caught. And while that's drying off, I got some Vallejo track primer colour and did the bases of the vans, give them a quick spray. So I had the basics done. As I say, it's only the first layer in basics, because I do extra on it as well. This is first stage on this weathering. There's so many different methods you can use weathering. You've got powders, brush, you can use brushes. There really is no right or wrong way. But if you're following it, and ideally, you can use different methods to get the same effect. But my recommendation, if you want to do authentic weathering, is to follow a photo and work off the assumption that less is more. Don't overdo anything, because it's all too easy to overdo something. If you make it, I mean, these will look believable for heavily weathered on a layout when they're done. But I'm going to be doing some light weathering projects. I didn't mix the resin perfect either. It should be 50-50, and I mixed neither of them 50-50, but there I've poured the latex in. The resin in. And I'm making sure it gets into all the corners, as I do with this one. I mix a bit of red dye in, but it doesn't work out that good. In fact, it worked out pretty crap, to be honest. If I'm honest with people. And there we go, making sure the resin makes it into the corners and there's no bubbles, and there you can watch it go off before your very eyes. That one went off really quickly. It was still soft, but it actually cured fairly quick, that one. And there we are, there's the roofs I've made. I broke a couple of corners off, so I needed filling, and one were never fully done proper. It still has an edge broken off, but I sprayed it and I made the best of it. It still looks okay once everything were finished on it. I can go back to it and fill it at a later date and give it a spray and blend the weathering in. Anyway, what we doing here? That's what I'm doing. I'm putting a black wash on, so it falls into all the recesses. Because another good tip for when you're painting wagons like this, especially under frames, is you want a good contrast between the paints you're putting on. Like, it's got an under chassis colour, but for all the recesses I'm giving it a black wash so it'll run into the recesses. Then later on I'll redo it again, but I dry brush it with the layout track colour. You'll see me doing it after this anyway. I re-go over it and brush it over with the layout track colour dry brushing. And here what I'm using is Games Workshop Agrax Earthshade, just to give a mucky appearance on the outside. And it's good because it's a wash. Once you set the wagons down, it drops towards the bottom of the wagon and sticks in recesses, so it does a good job. And here I'm spraying over with brown violet, it's called, which is a weird colour because it looks neither brown or violet. And over the top of another van, over the McVitie's van. It's just to make it look like there's a bit of moss on the brush squidged wrong. But anyway, I go over it with grey after, and then I go over it with weathering powders. But there I'm putting the weighting. No, I'm gluing the roofs on. Sorry. Gluing the roofs onto the two wagons I moulded the roofs for. And here we have, I'm dry brushing the Vallejo track primer on to bring up the details. And later after that I go over it. I go over them all with very light dry brushing. Not white, do it with grey or a cream or whatever, but don't do white. And there I'm just rolling the tube backwards and forwards and then snap it off using a craft knife and used rolling the tube back and forward because its stovepipe were missing. I made another one out of brass rodding. And here I'm touching in the roof on the lazy bitch and silly clock wagon. I'm sure that's not what it stands for. And I'm dabbing in paint there to give a bit of weathering look. I think I used grey and just dabbing in. And here I'm using weathering powders on the roofs just to give it that bit extra weathering, and a little bit of axle rust around the axle boxes, not too much, I'm not going mad with it. I may do later, I may do long-winded. I want to weather another logo, it's just which. And I take most of it off again, I only want a little bit on them. They were never horrendously rusty. But we do want a show of it there. And anyway, at this point, this is where I dry brush. I used Tyrant Skull or whatever it's called, the Citadel colour, to just brush a light highlight on it. Probably overdone, but what a white highlight does, or lighter coloured highlight, is it shows edges and gives more form. Shows details and gives more form to your model. Obviously I'd probably use a bit darker white than I've used on this. This is it's like a creamy white Tyrant Skull. But it just highlights all them details on it. And here we go, here they are on the rotisserie. And there we go, next lot. I do like the bird's eye van, that's worked out well, as has that coal wagon. The Arnold Sands one has. And the bird's eye's not too bad. Could have probably knocked back on the highlighting, dry brushing a bit, but they look decent. They look decent once they're on a layout. Here we are, coming round behind the train. Thank you for watching, and tatty pie, people.